Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 740. Today we're going to take a look at Savannah Park. This is a Kramer and Kiesling design coming out from Capstone Games. It's a 1 to 4 player kind of tile arrangement game. It's definitely a family level kind of weight, but let's jump down to the table. I'll tell you how it works and I'll come back and tell you what I think of it. Okay, so here I have the game kind of loosely set up. Now you can see each player is going to have a board like this, and these are going to be kind of seated with these tiles, and every player is going to take and randomly just throw all of these tiles out, and these are all just depictions of various different animals, different groupings of them, and you can see these different empty spots on the board. You're going to fill those up, and notably some of them have a lot of animals like this one, and you can see this one also has a little watering hole, and here you've got this little antelope or springbok there. And that one's also got a watering hole. So that's what you kind of note there. So you're going to throw those out in the empty spaces. You're going to end up with 2 left over, that once you fill up all the empty spaces, you'll have 2 left over. And then you can take and choose and cover up 2 of these grassy areas here, leaving the trees and the fires and the rocks alone. You just kind of put those like so. And then up here, you've got a score track, which players will, all the scoring is done at the end of the game. So each player will have a little marker there to track scores. You score some different things depicted in the middle there. And a couple other things to note here is, like I said, there's a player board for each player. Now, this is kind of like the starter side, so to speak, with the trees and the fires already out there. Then you have this side here, which is mostly blank. So each player has another set of tiles in their color, and the colors on the back here, of the trees and the fires and that kind of stuff there. So you can sort of set up different maps if you want on the other sides here. And there's some examples in the rule book of some maps you might try out. And the other neat thing is there's little boxes here, as you can see, in the different player colors. So all your pieces are nicely in those little boxes. Now the game mechanics are very, very simple, and the game plays very quickly. So what's going to happen is, let's say I'm the start player. I'm going to choose one of these tiles. Maybe I'll say I'm going to choose the one with the 3 rhinos. So I'll take this tile. I'll take my little prairie dog or meerkat, and I'll mark that spot there, because I am now going to move this tile that I chose to another spot on the board. And everybody else is also going to take the same tile, this one with the 3 rhinos in this case, from the board. Now it'll start off in a different position because everybody did their board randomly, but then you're going to take and then flip this over, and then you're going to put it on an empty space on your board. Now in this case, you can cover up, if you want, the trees or grassland. You can't ever cover up the 3 sort of fire spaces, and you can't cover up the rock in the middle. So maybe I'll just move it down here to the bottom, cover up that grassland. Once everybody's done that, they're going to take and put their meerkat back. The reason you do the meerkat is so later on in the game, this shouldn't really happen, but it might happen maybe with younger players, or if you get a little bit lost. You can't ever, of course, put the tile back in the spot that you took it from, and that's what this little marker here is there, just to kind of remind you you actually pulled it from that spot. So we'll do that, and then maybe Billy across the table will say, hey, let's take the one with, I don't know, the rhinoceros and the watering hole. So everybody will pick that up, and so everybody has to move the same tile as all the other players on each turn. So I'll take that, and then, I don't know, maybe I'll move this over here back to where this one was. So you're going to keep doing that back and forth until all the tiles have been moved and flipped over. Well, obviously, once the tile's been flipped over and put face down like that, then it can't be chosen again for the rest of the game. And so everybody's turns and everybody's game is going to end at the exact same time as everybody goes around and we move these. Now, once everybody's done, we're going to keep track of the score here. So everybody has like a little safari guide type of figure here. They're going to move around the score track as we score these different elements. So the first thing you're going to do is evaluate all of the fires. You've got the size 1 fire, the size 2 fire, the size 3 fire. Evaluate the grasslands, the trees, and then all the different animal types. And once you've scored all of that, then whoever has the most points is the winner. So first, let's talk about these different fires. So once you've moved all the tiles, you're going to look at the single size fire, the 1 fire. Any of the tiles around that depict 1 animal. So if this one had been moved here, and at the end of the game, since this is a size 1 animal, this is a size 1 fire, all the size 1s are going to get removed. Now this one, if this one was here, it'd be okay because this is a size 3. But if we go and evaluate the size 3 fire, any animals that are directly around that have the same number as fires there, so 3 fires and 3 animals, that one will go away. And then over here, let's say we've got this one with 2 animals here. If it ended up over there, then these will go away. So these fires will kind of burn out and chase away the animals depicted based on the size. And I will say there can be situations where you might have to be forced to do that, and it might be a beneficial move to put animals in harm's way, so to speak. So after you sort of evaluate all the fires, you're going to go and look there, and you're going to score 1 point for every open grassland here. So if you had a tile on top of it, you won't score that. But if it was open, you'll score 1 point for every grassland, and then 3 points for every tree. And then you're going to evaluate your largest grouping of all the different animals. And so there's this line marker. Actually, every player has a line marker. So you can kind of mark this along, and you just need one of them. The others are used for a variant. So as you kind of score these things, you can move this along here. So the first thing we're going to score is the giraffes. Now the one thing you can see here is you can see the watering holes there, 1, 2, and 3. So you want to have you're going to look at your biggest grouping of giraffes and contiguous tiles that have at least one watering hole. And then you're going to score the number of those giraffes, multiply it by the number of watering holes in that group. So once you score the giraffes, everybody's going to score the elephants, and then so on. So let's kind of look at an example scoring here. Okay, so let's say we were scoring the antelope here. So you can see this big tile here, this has basically one of each animal. And we have here the largest contiguous group, let's say, is we got one antelope there. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all up here like this. And inside this grouping, we have 3 watering holes. So you take 9 times 3, and that would be 27. Whereas if we looked here, let's look at our giraffes, we only have this little grouping here. So we've got 1 giraffe there, and then 2, 3, 4, so 4 giraffes. But there's only 1 watering hole in this group of giraffes, so that would only be 4 points. Now, if we had a situation like this, let's say we had gotten this guy inside here, we'd be able to draw a contiguous line through these, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but times 2, since these 2 spot tiles that have giraffes on them also have watering holes, so 5 times 2, that would be 10 points. So you can kind of see this one here that has all 5 is a very valuable one, because you can kind of fork off the different sort of herds of the different animals through this one. And then you've got some with 3 and some with 1. So as you move them, it's going to be difficult because you don't get to choose which ones to move in a multiplayer game anyway. And then you got to try to arrange them in the best way. Now there's some other variants and things like that. We'll go back to my talking head and I'll talk about some of those. But that's the gist of how you play the game. Okay, so that is Savannah Park, and I'll just jump right into my pillars of review. We'll talk about player count and play time. Play time, I think in the box is 20 to 30 minutes, and I think that's true no matter what your play count is, because it's all sort of simultaneous play, and no matter how many players you have, 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's the same number of turns. It's just somebody will be in control of the turn based on whose turn it is. Now in terms of play count, I played it with 1, 2, and 3. Have not played with 4, although I don't think it really matters that much. Although I would say it's sort of effectively harder with more players, because you have less turns where you get to say what the tile is that we're moving, because you pick up a tile and say, okay, well, I really want to move this one now because it's going to make room for something else that I want to move later. And I don't want somebody else calling that tile that I want to move later, because then I'll have nowhere to put it. So if I need the 3 rhinos to go over to this side of the board and somebody calls it now and I've got nowhere to really put it, I've got to go put it off somewhere where it probably won't score me any points. So the more players you have calling the shots, you know, the chances go up that you're not going to call the shots in the order that you want. And the solo mode basically is, you know, you calling all the shots. So you try to take a look at the shuffled up board of tiles and just sort of really grind your brain and try to think about the most optimum path for everything to move around in the exact right way. And then with more players, obviously that gets kind of thrown out the window. Now I will say, so with single player, you just kind of hit like target points. And so I think my high score is like 140 something, maybe 150 something. And I think the maximum, or like the high level, is 200 something, which I think it'd be possible, but I also think you might have to cheat and sort of set the tiles up in a right kind of way too. I don't know, probably not, but when I played it with other players, also a good score is usually, you know, north of 100 or so, up to 150 around there anyway. So there's also some variants which I showed you where you can sort of rearrange the map, and that's kind of a neat way to kind of keep the game fresh. There's another one which I'm not real sure about, where you place the lion tokens on empty spaces, and then when you place the token on that space, you get some extra points in the middle of the game. It's okay. That one just seems kind of superfluous to me. But there's one variant that I tried out, which is not in the rulebook, it's of my own creation. And it's basically adding like a dummy player, either to, and I just tried this solo, just to kind of make it a little bit more difficult, where you have another player that is just dictating the tiles. So if you have a leftover box, you could play this with 1, 2, or 3 players. You could shuffle up all the tiles in one box and then draw it, and it's random, and everybody just has to do that one. And so it's just difficult on everybody. So I thought that was a little bit more interesting to play that solo, to sort of get that sort of, you know, dictated to you what you have to place, and then try to worm your way around that and sort of play a little bit more tactically in that way. That was kind of interesting. So kind of like an advanced, I don't know about advanced, but like a hard mode for solo, which you could still use, you know, with like a couple other players if you really wanted to kind of just throw something at other players. Now, at the end of the day, I really enjoy this game. It really kind of reminds me of a couple of games, sort of like a game called Karuba, where players are like flipping a tile and then everybody has to do kind of the same one, but then you build this path through a forest in a way. So everybody's trying to build this path and send your little treasure hunters down. But also a lot like these other 2 games, which are really, really obscure. One is called Finito, and the other is called Numeri. So Finito, F-I-N-I-T-O, and Numeri, N-U-M-E-R-I. And I think there's videos at least for Finito on Board Game Geek, and I think there's for Numeri, where you have these sort of placements that you have to do. And the concept is that mechanically they're not that similar, but it's of this sort of constricting sort of space of choices, where you have to get things lined up and you're sort of placing things in a tactical way. So you're just trying to not do the least crappy job you can do, because you don't really ever get a chance to do the most optimal thing, because people are choosing stuff or dice are rolling in a certain way in those other games where it's not exactly what you want. But you go into it kind of knowing that, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to place here because this is, if I place here, this gives me my most amount of options on future placements and future turns. So when you look at a game like that, like this one especially, you have to sort of plan out a couple of turns ahead. You just have to do it. But the mechanics and everything are so just dead simple. It's like, you know, pick a tile and put it somewhere. That's it. That's the only thing you got to do. But in the back of your brain, you got to have in your mind, if I put this there, that's going to lock me out of some of these other spots or these other things. So if I put it here, it gives me some options if they move these other tiles, which I'm going to need. That's all very abstract. But it's so simple and basic enough that it's family level, but it's still got a lot of this other kind of stuff kind of burning in the back of your brain, which makes it really fun to play. So I definitely recommend this game. There's something about this kind of style of game where you have a little bit of like a random seed generation, in this case driven by the other players, that you have to sort of tactically respond to. And sometimes you get these like little moments of, oh, you picked the exact right tile, I want to move that one, thank you for doing that. Or you picked the absolute worst wrong tile for me to move, and now I've got to completely shift my whole strategy. And so that's a really fun thing, and it plays, you know, 20 minutes, super fast. You can play it back to back to back if you really want to. I definitely recommend it. Not necessarily just for folks with the family game situation, but even as a nice kind of filler, you know, as a warm-up or a cool-down or something like that for a game night. I really, really recommend this game. It's a lot of fun. Very dead simple. You know, obviously, if you're kind of on the fence about it, I would try it for sure, because it's just, there's like a little bit more than meets the eye with this one. So definitely recommend Savannah Park. Thanks.